Good evening, everyone. I was just saying in the chat that I'm going to have to change the title of this video because something new has developed around the Biden paper saga. So, you guys hear me? Hello, dear. Andy just stepped in. Oh.
Oh my gosh. How many times in a row is this, dear? I'm going for a new record. No, he has no comment. He just raises his eyebrows at me. Thank you, dear. Saving the day. I got distracted at the last minute. I was just saying, voicelessly without my microphone, that I have had a new development in the Biden papers saga. I'm not sure how to pronounce saga, so maybe it was better that I didn't have a microphone when I was talking about that. The DOJ reportedly declined to have the FBI monitor the Joe Biden document search. So we will read about that tonight. That strikes me as very interesting. I think that we are just in the midst of so much corruption that we don't even know what's happening here. So we will unpack as much of it as we have. Let's see what we're going to talk about tonight. So we're going to talk about Biden laughing at the idea of explaining his hidden documents, the White House deflecting back to Republicans when asked about this stuff, how even an Obama staffer has questions about this whole ordeal, Joy Behar's solution for the Biden scandal, the Biden administration wanting to go back to masking on flights. I don't know if you guys are excited about that, but I know I sure am. DeSantis wanting to prevent companies from even considering ESG, so we'll unpack that for sure. I'm curious if you guys think that's a win or overreach. People are saying that he is overreaching, but I'm not convinced. Let's see what this article has to say. Judge refusing to accept the idea of a Twitter class action lawsuit from former employees. San Francisco wanting reparations for Black residents, and critics of this plan. Then if we have time, we'll talk about the astrophysicist who thinks that the science is steeped in systemic white supremacy. So no, I'm not joking. The stars are actually white supremacy. And then Sheila Jackson Lee, who wants to criminalize speaking ill of minorities, and the trans sports player who says they've never felt that they have any kind of advantage over other team members and opponents. So we'll judge whether that has any merit at all. I'm excited about tonight. I can't help feeling that this Biden document thing is really, really going to continue to ramp up even as 2024 draws closer. I have no idea who's going to run on the Republican side. I don't know who should run on the Republican side. I feel like you could knock Joe Biden over with a feather at this point, and I don't think that they realize how serious of an issue this is for them. And I'm not sure that they should realize. They should probably just continue to brush it off and pretend like it's nothing while the voters are looking at it and saying, what on earth is this? This seems incredibly corrupt. Like all the news about Hunter Biden paying almost $50,000 in rent on a house that he owned. Very, very, very strange developments. And the Biden White House would do well to be fully transparent about it. But I feel like they're trying to play both sides of the game so they come out on top. I'm not convinced it's going to work. I think this is really going to be a drag on them going forward, and I know that Democrat leadership also seems to think so, but we'll see what happens. Anything might happen. We were kind of expecting a red wave in the midterms, and that didn't happen. But in other news, I am also uploading the audio version of this show onto my Substack, which is lydialederman.substack.com. Not Sour Patch Lids at Substack.com. It's my full name, .substack.com. Really like Substack. Substack is one of the last places that actually encourages freedom of speech. Anybody can write there. They can write whatever they want. They can engage with their viewers and their readers with a chat app that I haven't really fully explored. And you can also upload media as a podcast, which is really neat too. So I've really been enjoying exploring that. I'm going to be uploading probably 5 episodes from the past each weekend I have 71 episodes. This is my 72nd. So I'm going to be uploading 5 each weekend for, several months or whatever to see if we can get them all up there just as a kind of backup if you need other stuff to listen to and you run out of all your other podcasts. I know that over the holidays I ran out of Daily Wire podcasts to listen to. At least Scott Adams was there every day. He's very consistent. He's 7 days a week, which is really quite impressive. So just to recap, we're going to be talking a lot about the Bidens. We're going to be talking about Ron DeSantis. We will be discussing the judge slapping down the Twitter lawsuit, San Francisco's reparations, and whether astrophysics is white supremacist. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. Now that I have my microphone, classic Lydia. The DOJ reportedly declined to have the FBI agents monitor Joe Biden document search. This is from the New York Post from today, from about 6 minutes ago, so I can truly say you heard it here first. The Justice Department decided against having FBI agents watch over a search for classified documents conducted by President Biden's lawyers at his Delaware homes, in part because his attorneys were deemed to be cooperating with DOJ's investigation, according to a report. The Wall Street Journal reported Tuesday that DOJ officials also opted for the hands-off approach in order to avoid complicating future phases of the investigation and to not interfere with Special Counsel Robert Hur's work. According to the Journal, Biden's attorneys were given permission by the Justice Department to search the 80-year-old We have an 80-year-old president, guys. To search the 80-year-old president's Wilmington and Rehoboth Beach residences for sensitive documents and notify the department if any were found in order so that law enforcement personnel could take custody of them. The agreement between the DOJ and Biden's legal team took place after around 10 documents were classified markings, some dealing with Ukraine, Iran, and the United Kingdoms, were found in the president's former office at the Penn Biden Center think tank November 2nd. We are very familiar with that. And here it looks like is a drone shot of the president's home in Wilmington. Interesting. This is a developing story. Check back for more updates. So that's really fascinating. I personally I suspect that the Biden Department of Justice is the opposite of justice. I think that they're very biased. I think that Merrick Garland is a political player. And I have a prediction, which is that neither Trump nor Biden will see any kind of consequences for this kind of nonsense, because the truth of the matter is that we have at least a two-tier justice system. There is certainly not the same kind of justice for politicians and celebrities that there definitely would be for you and me. It's unfortunate, but it's true. It's just the way it is, and it helps to come to terms with it earlier rather than later. So, on the same topic, President Biden smirks at reporters and again refuses to answer questions on why he hoarded classified documents in his garage, as the White House deflects and demands Kevin McCarthy reveal his deals with GOP rebels. That's such a red herring. That's such a clear attempt at distraction, because I don't think that in light of the Biden documents, anybody really even cares about the Speaker of the House anymore. That was a topic of hot conversation for just over a week, and that is definitely a thing of the past now. And that's not just because we have a 24-hour news cycle. I think I need to silence my phone. I had the volume up for the first time in my life, so I got to make sure it's not going to chime. There we go. The White House calls on the speaker to release concessions he made to win the gavel. The GOP, meanwhile, wants full-on disclosure on Biden's classified documents debacle. War is heating up between both sides now Republicans hold power in the House. I've been so encouraged by everything that Republicans are attempting to do, but Dave Smith made the very salient point that the whole time that the Republicans were fully in charge of politics, like the House and the Senate, they did nothing. And when they had Trump in presidency, they did nothing. But now that they have some opposition and they're relatively confident that nothing will happen, well, they feel free to say things like, oh, maybe we should abolish the IRS. Well, maybe you should have said that when you could have done something about it, but you didn't. So there is definitely a case to be made that they are definitely not acting in actual good faith. Biden stayed mum in the face of questions on Tuesday about the documents, smiling as reporters shouted questions at him. Let's see if we can see him. This man frustrates me so much. His corruption, his smugness, pretty much everything about him. And he seems like such a, such a lukewarm individual that you might be surprised by how strong my feelings are about him. But the more I find out about him and his family, the more he seems like a wolf in sheep's clothing. President did not answer questions from reporters, including one on whether he'd speak with Special Counsel Robert Hur as he met in the Oval Office with Netherlands Prime Minister Mark Rutte, who is incredibly unpopular as Biden is in his own country. Simply sat in silence as White House staff led shouting members of the press out of the room. The White House, meanwhile, ratcheted up its battle with the GOP, calling on McCarthy to reveal the deals he'd made. It took McCarthy 15 ballots, blah, blah, blah. We talked about all of this. McCarthy said he made no formal agreements to win the votes he needed, but conservatives said they were promised certain concessions. Some Republicans have even said they aren't sure of all that McCarthy promised to the right wing of the party. He's already placed in battle mode with the White House, demanding cuts to government spending instead of increasing the debt limit, a priority for conservatives. Good, I'm glad he's doing that. And on Tuesday, Ian Sams, whom we met yesterday, held a briefing call with reporters to slam Republicans' probes. Their outrage is all pure theater, he said. He would not commit to the White House cooperating with the GOP requests for documents and other information. If they intend to be fully transparent, they should be willing to cooperate with the GOP 100%, but you know they can't do that because they are not transparent. They are liars. They lie about everything, and this is just one more thing they're lying about. I don't even know how they keep track of all the different lies they told at this point. It really strikes me as kind of a confusing way to go with the whole spinning a whole bunch of different threads. But yeah, we know that they've known about these documents since November before the midterm. So all of this is in incredibly bad faith. The way the White House has handled this is just genuinely disgusting. But exactly what we expect from the Biden administration. In fact, it's so bad that even Obama's ethics chief is tearing into Biden for, quote, appalling negligence of classified documents and breaking the public's trust by keeping it quiet for 2 months. Biden's own retention of classified records reflects an inexcusable neglect of the most basic security protocols, Schaub said, who has not been introduced. I don't know who that is. He added, it is nothing like Trump's deliberate refusal to return classified records that led to the raid on Mar-a-Lago. Classified files were found in Biden's think tank office and Wilmington garage. Now, another key difference that nobody's really addressing on the left is that where Trump had one set of documents that he refused to hand over that later turned out to be like autographed stuff from Kim Jong-il or whatever, in one location, they've already found 2, or I guess technically 3 different instances of documents from Biden's hoarding of them. So we've had the Biden Penn Center, we had the Wilmington, I think the Wilmington location of the Biden's household, and then we also had like another room in the Wilmington home where another document was found. Obama-era ethics chief Walter Schaub tore into President Biden's neglect in bringing home classified files and storing them in his garage at his Wilmington residence and in his think tank office. I don't think it was neglect. I think this was intentional, and I think he did it because he knew that they weren't keeping record of who exactly was visiting that residence. And the mere fact that he spent so much of his time on vacation, indeed, at this location, says to me that he was likely doing incredibly unethical things under the radar. I don't think that neglect is the right turn of phrase. I think that intentional, malicious hiding and probably something like influence peddling, like with Hunter, and this is actually also something that Hillary Clinton definitely did with the Clinton Foundation, and with her exorbitant speaking fees. But not to worry, Joy Behar has a solution. The View's Joy Behar says the easiest way for Biden to fix the classified document controversy is to say, I know I look hypocritical, and just apologize. I don't know why the Daily Mail decided to put a question mark there, but I'm not going to read it with that tone. Joy Behar, who's also 80, oh my gosh, why do these people hold positions of influence well into their 80s? Criticized the president for not speaking sooner on the classified documents and suggested he should have apologized at the beginning. She's probably not wrong. He should have said, look, I know I look hypocritical on that tape. I'm sorry about that, she said on The View on Tuesday. In September, Biden called Donald Trump, 76, irresponsible after he was found with hundreds of classified documents in his Mar-a-Lago mansion. The View continuously lamented the difference between Biden's and Trump's case as the liberal show largely follows Democratic ideals. Well, that's a nice way of putting it. However, the women of The View did come out and say they want Biden to set expectations and be transparent on how the information is being released. And Joy actually said something that was kind of instructive when she commented on this. I think it was either Joy or Whoopi. Either way, both kind of gross, nasty old biddies who are on this show, but they said something along the lines of, yes, we're going to be more lenient on this guy because he's on our side. But it sounds like Joy is coming around to an idea that I've also run into, which is that you're actually harder on your own side because you feel like they need to be held to higher standards. And this is something that I'm seeing pretty much every day now. It's that Steven Crowder said something about this today. In fact, I might want to talk about him in a little while because he was talking about how conservative media is run by the kinds of standards that left-wing media is held by, and that conservative media is also enthralled to big tech, which is a problem for us because we want to be something different. And people were postulating that maybe he was talking about the Daily Wire, and I really don't think that he was, because the Daily Wire is very much their own independent thing. But I really resonated with resignated. I don't know where resignated came from. Pick your word. It's a pick your word day with Lydia. I really resonated with his message that we need to hold the right to a very high standard. And this seems to be kind of the message that Joy Behar is making here too, which I can respect and appreciate, little as I respect or appreciate Joy Behar. She says a lot of really nasty things. She's really not a very nice lady. Joe Biden, Joe Biden, 80, pictured, was found with more than a dozen classified documents inside his Wilmington, Delaware home and in his office at the Penn Biden Center. Much speculation has been made that the documents were here. I am not convinced. I'm just unimpressed by the shape of their garage. It is not neat. But yeah, so I was really intrigued by what she had to say. I don't think that would have solved the problem, but he could have been honest right from the outset. I'm starting to think that Joe Biden has fully forgotten in his dementia how to be honest and will never be able to remember it moving forward. Now, on a slightly different tack, the Biden administration is doing other things in the meantime. Instead of actually answering questions about these files, they want to bring back mask mandates onto flights months after the president insisted the pandemic was over. And that's why I appreciate the Daily Mail, because they remember stuff like that and they put it right into their headlines. Biden's Department of Justice argued in court Tuesday to reinstate mask mandates for air travel. This comes after nearly a year without the requirement for domestic flights. A Florida judge ruled in April to lift the federal mandate. Thank goodness. Biden also declared in a September interview the COVID-19 pandemic is over. And speaking of Florida, we're going to talk about DeSantis next, but I want to know what you guys think about this idea. To me, it's incredibly depressing to think about the idea of going back to where we were over a year ago. I hated wearing masks on planes. There's nowhere you can go. You can't move and use kind of like your body to get a little bit of your own autonomy in your own space. So you're in a very, very cramped space, and you're being forced to do something that you may personally find completely inefficacious and really frustrating, and it very much is a violation of your personal autonomy. And they have complete control over whether you travel at all. They will kick you off a flight. They will bar you from your airline. They'll bar you from your flight, and they'll basically refuse you service as far as like whether you can fly with their airline at all, which I find really gross and such a clear overstepping of bounds. I think the airline should have never been allowed to do this, because from my understanding, being in an airplane is one of the safest places you can be, because the air is constantly recycled and kept from like stagnating with gross germs in it 24/7. I'm going to turn down the brightness of my computer. I left off one of my lights to try to prevent the ring from reflecting on my glasses. It's kind of irritating having glasses because you have to worry about the reflection all the time. But yeah, that really depresses me. I really hope this doesn't come back. Hopefully they lose this court case and don't get the option to make that a permanent kind of thing. But we all know that when you give the government power during a crisis, they will simply create another crisis next time they need more power. We saw this coming, and we went ahead and did it anyway because we aren't fully in control of what happens to us, apparently. So we will be tracking this story closely in the hopes that it turns out to not be true. All right, we're going to see what you guys are thinking, and then we are going to talk about Florida, which is always a very refreshing story to read, typically, unless we're reading about Florida man who's often cracked out of his mind and doing crazy things. Oh no, somebody got timed out. Don't say mean or rude things in the chat. Be nice. Did you read my tweet? I did retweet Andy. Andy's always tweeting about how we're going to go live. Everyone calling me out for forgetting my mic. I know. Thank you. Can anyone hear her? No, no one could hear me except for me. Sorry about that. I could definitely do tutorials on video editing and production and all that. Yes, Andy is an excellent teacher. My grasp of OBS and my understanding of Adobe Premiere skyrocketed when Andy came into my life. He taught me all sorts of shortcuts, really neat stuff. I do think that Andy should make a YouTube channel and talk about all of this stuff. He does the coding, he does the crazy computer stuff that I've never understood, but that my dad was also involved with. My dad went off to the office and he did things that we didn't fully understand, and he would come home and he would try to explain it to us, and we were like, I don't know what you're talking about. Really, the only thing that we understood was him being like irritated with project managers and management in general, because that was like relationship stuff that ladies understood. Hi, everyone. Hi, Bree. Welcome back. Lack of accountability on the Biden stuff is such a black pill, but I guess it's not surprising. It's not. It's just highlighting that there's a two-tier justice system. I don't like it any more than you do. It's no good. I would watch and invest in editing, said Gino Fast in response to Andy. For sure. We do need a going live checklist. 100%. I think I need a different microphone arm. I do appreciate this one, but I also do other work at this desk. Maybe the solution is to bring in the L-shaped desk I've really been wanting. I move the microphone out of my way so that I can do like wife stuff, like budgeting, opening and reading the mail and all that jazz. I do enjoy using Substack. So far, I've had no issues with them. Yeah, they're awesome. A walking corpse. I'm assuming that is in reference to Joe Biden. We have a walking corpse as a president. Yeah. He is 80. Yep, for sure. Yep, it's not Grace. All right, so good. Bree has a YouTube channel. That's awesome too. Rehoboth is pronounced Rehoboth. Oh my gosh. I don't really care what it's called, where Biden's house is. I'm just going to call it the second Biden house, because the first Biden house is in Wilmington, which I can definitely pronounce. And Rehoboth, I don't know. I don't feel like learning new words to accommodate the Bidens. You know what I mean? Even Fox called Matt Gaetz an insurrectionist. That's crazy. Matt Gaetz was never an insurrectionist. You know what I found so funny was that people are still, Adam Kinzinger came out with a signed copy of the January 6th documents or whatever they came up with in their dumb little pretend commission. And I was just so fascinated by the comparison between what Biden said would be necessary to overthrow the government and what was actually present at the January 6th protest. I won't even call it a riot, even though it was a protest that got rowdy. Joe Biden, for the third time recently, I don't know if you guys remember this, threatened to basically nuke American citizens with F-15s. He said something along the lines of how you will never defeat the government without something like F-15s, certainly not with like semi-automatic weapons like AR-15s or whatever he was talking about. And I was just struck by the fact that nobody at January 6th even had an AR-15, let alone a fighter jet like an F-15. So I was like, yeah, I don't think you can talk about insurrection anymore if Joe Biden keeps saying that in order to overthrow the government, you're going to need a fighter jet. All right. What up? Hi, Andy. Oh, hey, Halls and the Kid. We love you. Hypocrisy in full view. I hope Americans with critical thinking can see all the BS they've done with Trump and how they're handing this whole situation to Biden. Hi, Lids. Yes, found in 3 different locations. Honey, did you bring classified documents home from work again? Yes, apparently, even when it's an accident or a mistake, bringing home or leaving in your car a classified document is a huge no-no. And it makes complete sense to me why. You are not supposed to be putting that stuff anywhere that other people can see it. And trust me, if it were like a lawyer or a nurse or anything like that left this in their garage, they would be in so much trouble. They'd probably be going to jail. Pretty much too sweet, which I actually kind of think is the way it should be. There should certainly be restrictions around who can take that kind of stuff and what you can do with it in order to make sure that they basically remain classified. Like, that's actually a really important matter of national security. Cue fake audience laughter. Oh gosh, not Joy SMH. Yeah, but she did kind of make a good point. I wish that she had pushed Biden to be more transparent, but I don't think that's really what she wants. I think she just wants to win. I know that happens to all of us. We can all be a little bit tribal. Democrats much more for whatever reason than Republicans, although Republicans can be plenty tribal too. I refer you to any kind of questioning of Donald Trump, and people will tell you that you're crazy, not a real conservative, etc. Joy is in fact that old. She is the same age as Joe Biden, which is to say way too old to be speaking so loudly about things that don't affect them and certainly won't affect them within the next 20 years. They say Trump refused to hand over documents, but what happened when Biden offered to hand them over? Presumably multiple times over the last 6 years. Did the National Archive refuse them? That's a good question. They talk a lot about Trump stonewalling for over a year about these documents, whereas Biden just had them since 2018 in the case of the ones at the Biden Penn Center. Yeah, that's a good point. Great point. Which she definitely looks it. Yeah, for sure. What do you think about Tate having girls who worked for him that he was also sleeping with? Do you think it's wrong to sleep with people who worked for you? Well, Andrew Tate, I won't really comment on. He is not a person of high character, and I cannot encourage people to listen to what he has to say. I've heard that he's right about certain things in certain ways, and I know that young men are really hurting. They really are looking for role models that they can look up to. They're looking for people who are truly masculine, guys who can kind of like point them in the right direction of strength and influence, and I really do understand the appeal there. I really do. And I know that I'm not allowed to speak about this because I'm a lady. This is exactly what tater tots tell me when I tweet about this. But I think that Jordan Peterson is 100% a better role model. And I will say this because he has the stable marriage, the kind of marriage that I aspire to. He has the whole series on marriage. This to me looks like he has those conservative values that really strengthen men and really put men in their best state. So I think that is definitely something that should be taken into consideration when looking at what Andrew Tate did with his business. I don't think it's good at all. All right, bottom line, everything in the government is documented. If there was no log monitoring people coming and going, then it was not a secure area. Yeah, for sure. I've heard that if Secret Service is involved, there should always be a log, but I don't know about that. That's something I didn't have a chance to look at today. Just started looking at it this evening. Oh my gosh, it just jumped on me. Where was I? Crap, okay. If people stand against it, it will fall apart quickly. It only continues as long as the people allow it to. Yeah. I'm at a loss for how to tell people to combat it. It's a very challenging situation, and I know that looking at injustice is often very depressing. In fact, some of my friends today on Twitter were saying, do you give a care anymore? You know, less family friendly, but they're like, it's very hard to care anymore. And I know, and I said that I know we're going into February. This is a very dark time of the year. The days are short. It's very cold. It seems like there's never going to be spring, but there will be spring. And I was saying the other day, too, to Colin Wright, who was talking about how stressful it is to just keep commenting on this gender and sexuality stuff all the time. I said, I feel like the sun is going to break through the clouds at any point now. I feel like we're really coming up on a breakthrough. I think that the bubble is going to burst. And I'm going to cling to that hope, even though I know that everybody is really feeling the pressure of constantly fighting. And it's hard, I know. But I really want to be able to tell young kids in 15 or 20 years that we fought for their right to not be sterilized and mutilated when they were young children. And to me, that's so important. And I really, 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 really hope that everybody with all the moral principle I have, that I try to surround myself, people like Colin Wright, Christina Buttons, and Chris Rufo, and, Billboard Chris. And I really hope they will continue to fight. We cannot get disheartened. Konstantin Kisin gave a speech the other day talking about how he's tired of talking about this stuff. But the fact is that wokeness still needs to be fought. I'm really going to keep looking for somebody who's saying really inspiring things, because I don't know if I'm alone in feeling like the sun is going to break through the clouds soon. I hope I'm not. I know I'm not crazy, but I remain optimistic. I think it's really going to get better. And as Andy likes to say, it will get brighter if we make it brighter. And I think that's entirely correct. Airlines should be allowed to do this, except they got government money, which to me means they lost that right. You're not a private company if you got government bailouts. That's actually a pretty good point. So we were talking about this the other day when a Catholic hospital had refused a trans surgery and they got in trouble because they had taken government money, and basically the judge ruled against them because they're like, no, you took government money. You're basically a tool of the state functionally. And I was like, yeah, that's why you don't do that. Like, I understand that. That really highlighted it to me, how important it was. All right, we're getting a little off track here. Somebody said lapel mic, which might be a good idea. I like one of those low level mics so I can just kind of swivel it out of the way, but it wouldn't be like, 2 feet away, which is where it is when I swivel it all the way out of the way so I can do some of my other work. All right, let's pop over to read about DeSantis, which is also rather encouraging, and you guys can let me know if you think he's gone too far. DeSantis bans state fund managers from weighing ESG concerns in investments. Interesting. I don't really like just the news headlines. I feel like they're a little bit too unclear. So let's read more. ESG investments remain a sticking point among conservatives, with many raising concerns about the potential impact on fossil fuel industry and speculating that the propagation of ESG is a means of spreading left-wing ideology in the corporate sector. Entirely correct. Good analysis. Florida Republican Governor Ron DeSantis announced on Tuesday that fund managers handling state assets may not account for environmental, social, and corporate governance considerations when weighing investments. There it is. There it is. That's what we were just talking about. If you take government money, you're going to do what they tell you to do because that's where you get your funding. And it's not just funding. You're giving them a modicum of control over you that you might not want to. So I think that's something that everybody across every side of the aisle in every field of work would do well to remember. The governor indicated that rather than considering ESG concerns, state fund managers need to solely consider financial return. This is how it always was in the past, certainly. The new policy will directly affect those managers addressing the Florida retirement system plan and other state assets. I think that DeSantis is in the right here because he doesn't want people to get shafted because ESGs have a notoriously bad rate of return for investment. We need asset managers to be laser focused on returns and nothing more. Florida's not going to subsidize the actions of a bunch of leftist ideologues who hate America. We're not going to let a bunch of rich people in Manhattan or Europe try to circumvent our democracy, said State Chief Financial Officer Jimmy Petronis in a press release announcing the policy. ESG investments remain a sticking point among conservatives, with many raising concerns. Yeah, that was the first part we read. DeSantis, in announcing the policy, echoed such concerns. In announcing the policy, echoed such concerns, saying corporations across America continue to inject an ideological agenda through our economy rather than through the ballot box. Today's actions reinforce that ESG consideration will not be tolerated here in Florida, and I look forward to extending these protections during this legislative session. A Florida Republican has been a vocal proponent of separating both the state and national economics from left-wing entities and foreign influences, openly mulling a ban on Chinese land purchases on the state and denouncing the World Economic Forum, which I didn't have a chance to study up on, but we might talk about tomorrow because they are meeting this week, I think it is, in Davos. Their vision is they run everything and everybody else is just a peasant. That type of stuff coming out of Davos, those policies are dead on arrival in my state of Florida, he said last week. And I just have to ask, have you guys heard any other politicians say that? We have Joe Manchin, we have Kristen Sinema, and we have Christopher Wray, the head of the FBI, currently in Davos. And I don't think it's just for reconnaissance. I think that's to participate in their activities. Now, I also know that there are journalists who are over there, and it's very important that we have full disclosure about what exactly they're doing there. So I won't judge somebody just for attending. But at the same time, if, for example, Christopher Wray is going to be there, I tend to think that's a little bit corrupt. And I am so glad to see DeSantis speaking out about this because I haven't seen any other politician, let alone a governor, talking about that. In fact, from my understanding, Brian Kemp, the governor of Florida, Republican governor of Florida, is currently in Davos. which I don't really care for. This is in line with holding our side to a higher standard because we want them to be of higher moral character. And I would like to know exactly what Kemp is doing over there. I would like to know why Sinema and Manchin are over there, although I know Manchin certainly is no Republican. But at the same time, if any of our leaders are over there, I want to know what they're up to. I saw that General Mark Milley, was also meeting with a Ukrainian military strategist near the border of Poland. And I was like, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? How is this okay? And it's interesting, the whole corruption with the Biden family, because when you start looking for that kind of corruption, you start to kind of see it everywhere. And it's a little disheartening. I think that might be part of the reason that people are kind of like, oh gosh, we're never going to win. But the fact that it's coming to light, I'm going to say that's a positive. I view that as an entirely wonderful thing. And I see us as making great advances now that we know what the enemy's position is. So hopefully we will be able to make good of that bad. There's always a silver lining. Here's another interesting thing that popped up. It's a little short piece. Judge slaps down Twitter employee class action lawsuit request. Haha, take that. Contract preempts joint lawsuits, the judge says. A federal judge this week ruled that a group of former Twitter employees may not bring a class action lawsuit against the company over their dismissal, citing the contract they signed with the company that stipulated an individual, not class, arbitration policy. Okay, so individually they could try to sue the company, but together they can't. The 5 plaintiffs signed arbitration agreements as part of their employment contracts with Twitter, U.S. District Judge James Donato said in a ruling published on Friday. Those agreements preempt class action arbitration with the company. Oh, it's pretty straightforward. The former employees are ordered to arbitration on an individual basis. Donato has previously directed Twitter to ensure that employees are properly notified before signing contracts with lawsuit-related stipulations in them. Yeah, so you know what the best notification of signing a bad contract is? Reading it with your own eyeballs and making sure you understand it. And if you don't, asking a lawyer to go over it with you, because that's the best way to make sure that you're not taken advantage of. In fact, when I've had contracts that I was looking at and I was unsure about some of the terminology, I asked some lawyers and I was like, what's happening here? Is this something I should be concerned about? And I felt like I went into that fully informed and I didn't make a mistake when it came to signing that kind of contracture. But this is a very interesting case. I'm curious if they will now individually try to sue Twitter. I don't think that you can really sue a company just for dismissing you. I'm pretty sure that it's at-will employment 100%, and an employer can let you go for pretty much anything other than, the obvious stuff like race, color, sexual orientation, whatever, any of that stuff. You know what I'm talking about. But yeah, we will keep an eye on that too, for sure. I'm sure that more people will try to individually sue Twitter. Oh my gosh. So I get so irritated with the YouTube chat because it keeps reverting to top chat, which is frustrating. That's not what I want to see. I want to see the live chat. I want to see everybody chatting. All right. San Francisco Reparations Committee proposes paying $5 million to Black residents loan forgiveness, says report. Although California was not a slave state, and in fact they did fight on the side of the Union, so against the Confederacy, against slavery the whole time, California was not in the South and never said anything remotely in favor of slavery. They are mulling paying $5 million each to Black long-term residents. Crazy stuff. The reparations would be made to address the public policies explicitly created to subjugate Black people. And at this point, I feel like California and the way it's collapsing and all of its various failures are just the practical application of social justice, postmodernism, Marxism. I really feel like all of those failures can be blamed on these exact ideas. So when Trump was in office, I was so pleased because all of the more conservative ideas I'd had about like giving people more freedom and making it easier for people to run their businesses and all that good jazz would really work well. And then when Trump did it, lo and behold, it worked great. Now in California, you can see that they're applying all of these ideas that we all think are so terrible. And lo and behold, they are terrible. The state is falling apart. Everyone's homeless and doing drugs. And now they're considering giving $5 million to people on the basis of their skin color. A City of San Francisco advisory committee is reportedly proposing paying every Black longtime resident $5 million. The proposal released last month by the African American Reparations Advisory Committee. Okay, so it's unlikely that this is going to happen, but it's being floated. It's not a great idea. Calls for a one-time lump sum payment of $5 million to each eligible person. And creates legal structures to protect those who receive reparations from financial speculators or predators, including court block accounts / trust accounts, according to the Daily Mail. The proposal, if adopted, would also supplement lower-income Black households to, quote, reflect the area median income annually for at least 250 years, which would have brought such incomes up to $97,000 in 2022. The plan additionally calls for financing a comprehensive debt forgiveness program that clears all education, personal credit card, payday loans, etc. The proposal would cost the city at least $50 billion with a B. So this is definitely not going to happen, I don't think. To be eligible for reparations payments, an individual must be at least 18 years or older and have identified as Black / African American on public documents for at least 10 years. So this would have to be a long con if you're going to identify as Black or African American. Additionally, they must meet at least 2 of 8 additional requirements from a list of criteria that includes being personally or the direct descendant of someone incarcerated by the failed war on drugs, or having been born in or migrated to the city between 1940 and 96, with proof of residency for at least 13 years. Although California was not a slave state, the reparations would be made to address the public policies explicitly created to subjugate Black people in San Francisco by upholding and expanding the intent and legacy of chattel slavery. The draft states about 5.7% of San Francisco's population in 2020 was Black, while Black people make up 40% of the homeless population, the committee said. Okay, so in order to make the case that these public policies, quote, explicitly created to subjugate Black people in San Francisco and uphold and expand the intent and legacy of chattel slavery, I think that would be a hard court case. I think that would be very difficult to prove that these policies exist to, quote, uphold and expand the intent and legacy of chattel slavery. This isn't going to happen. Not going to happen. I do want to talk about the lady who wants to criminalize certain hate speech about minorities, so we can look at that next. But we're also going to look at the lawyers who are slamming this proposed $5 million reparations. Outrageous, unconstitutional, unlawful. So here we have Leo Terrell. California's planned reparations are insulting, and Larry Elder said something very similar. Fox News contributor Leo Terrell slammed San Francisco's Reparations Committee for proposing each long-term Black resident receive $5 million due to decades of systematic repression. It's not ever going to get implemented. I'll be the first lawyer to fight against this, he said Monday on Hannity. This is outrageous. It's unlawful. It's unconstitutional. It's racist. But it is not surprising it came from California on the day of MLK's birthday, he added. That's a good point. We're talking about a racist program to benefit individuals who happen to be Black. $5 million. California was a free state. Who is going to pay for it? Why should they get $5 million? Because of skin color? It's insulting. I agree with him. Former California gubernatorial candidate Larry Elder, whom we love, echoed similar sentiments, saying reparations are the extraction of money from people who were never slave owners to be given to people who were never slaves. Elder highlighted how California was not a slave state, nor San Francisco a slave city. Furthermore, slavery was a Democrat institution. Why don't Democrats pay? Jim Crow was a Democratic institution. Why don't Democrats pay? Very few Republicans own slaves. Why should Republicans pay a dime? The whole thing is absolutely insulting. So both Larry and Leo agree that the whole thing is insulting and, yes, racist. The San Francisco African American Reparations Advisory Committee released a draft report in December to address the public policies, explicitly created to subjugate Black people. While neither San Francisco nor California formally adopted the institution of chattel slavery, the tenets of segregation, white supremacy, and systematic repression and exclusion of Black people were codified through legal and extra-legal actions, social codes, and judicial enforcement. Terrell argued America doesn't have a race issue, but rather a race card issue. That's a good point. Democrats need to play the race card. They need to keep blacks on the government payroll because without the black population, there is no Democratic Party, he told guest host Pete Hegseth. They have a race card issue and they are never going to let that card go. This country has no systemic racism. That is something from 1955. In 2023, we have no institutionalized racism, but you can't tell that to a Democrat. I'm fully inclined to agree with him. I think he's correct on this count, but there are people who fully benefit from pushing the idea of racism, and one of those people is Sheila Jackson Lee, who wants to criminalize certain hate speech, quote, inspired by white supremacy. And let me shrink this down a little bit so you can see the headline on this one. There we go. Washington. Rep. Sheila Jackson Lee, Democrat from Texas, has introduced a new bill that hopes to fight, quote, white supremacy by criminalizing some forms of, quote, hate speech. The Leading Against White Supremacy Act of 2023, LAWSA, interesting, seeks to prevent and prosecute white supremacy-inspired hate crime and conspiracy to commit white supremacy-inspired hate crime by amending Title 18 of the U.S. Code to expand the scope of hate crimes. Oh, good. We're going to expand the scope. In general, a person engages in a white supremacy-inspired hate crime when white supremacy ideology has motivated the planning, development, preparation, or perpetration of actions that constituted a crime or were undertaken in furtherance of activity that, if effectuated, would have constituted a crime. Jackson Lee's Title 18 amendment adds the criminalization for conspiracy of white supremacy-inspired hate crime. If a person helps plan, develop, or inspire such hate crimes, then that person would also be criminally liable under the new bill. The bill itself also says that it would impose criminal penalties for those who published material advancing white supremacy, white supremacist ideology, antagonism based on replacement theory, or hate speech that vilifies or is otherwise directed against any non-white person or group, and such published material if that material was read, heard, or viewed by a person who engaged in the planning, development, preparation, or perpetration of a white supremacy-inspired hate crime. Oh my gosh, this is ridiculous. In essence, if a person posts offending material online that inspires another person to commit a hate crime, the original poster could face consequences of criminal charges. I hope you guys realize how dangerous this idea is. This bill had better die. It's not readily apparent how enforcers of the new policy would determine content to be inspirational for white supremacy hate crimes, or exactly who is on the hook for the content. The content's original creator, a separate person posting the content, or even just a sharer of the content. It's also not clear how much responsibility, if any, social media platforms like Facebook or Twitter would potentially face for hosting the offending content under the proposed changes. How much responsibility do you guys think? Because as far as I'm concerned, this is just another Democrat ploy to keep big tech in the tank for them after Elon Musk came on. Mass shootings and other hate crimes motivated by white supremacy have been increasing in frequency and intensity, the bill says. They give no numbers, I'm sure. These heinous and violent crimes are inspired by conspiracy theories, blatant bigotry, and mythical falsehoods such as replacement theory, which is something that Chuck Schumer himself has stated as fact. He says we're not having enough children. We need to import more people, specifically from across the southern border. All instances must be prevented, and severe criminal penalties must be applied to their perpetrators. So you're telling me that mass shootings and other crimes are not currently punishable by law. Is that what I'm getting here? Because that seems like exactly what she's saying. Here we go. Language in the bill is broad, according to Fox News, which added that the bill could result in people facing criminal charges for the content they share on social media that's judged to be, quote, hateful. Under the new bill, the U.S. Department of Justice should have the authority to investigate, intercede, and undertake other actions that it deems necessary, so more government control, to combat white supremacy-inspired conspiracies and hate crimes, and appropriate to interdict, mitigate, or prevent such action from culminating in violent activity. So you're telling me that law enforcement should have the tools to enforce laws and try to stop crimes. That's crazy. Truly crazy. The Justice Department would also have... Oh yeah, we already read that. Jackson Lee's bill currently has no co-sponsors and is unlikely to pass a Republican-controlled House. Good. Good. How irritating. It's irritating that she even recommended this, but we also know that Sheila Jackson Lee wears a lot of big hats so she can hide the fact that she's not a very bright lady. And I say this based on her own actions, in no way on the color of her skin or on any other factor, just based on what she's done. So let's read. Somebody says, beware the hot mic. No, I'm less worried about the hot mic and more worried about the fact that my mic is way too far away. I don't think lapel mics for podcast format work unless you're actively using your hands a lot, like a cooking show or something, says Andy. Okay, cool. I get what you mean, Andy. All right, I'm using a Rode one that I have. Okay, so they're talking about the microphone arms. We will come up with a good one going forward, I promise. I need to take my own advice, says Andy, just super busy. Andy is super busy. His company's doing really well, and I'm really happy for him, but it's really kind of making him really busy. I went on a Daily Wire fans podcast called Daily Wire Friends last week. I'm not able to join them this week, but they're live tonight at 7. If anyone's interested, I'm going to have to check that out. That sounds like a blast. Oh, great. That sounds fun. Yeah, 100%. That sounds awesome. All right, let's see here. Yeah, so Sheila Jackson Lee is a piece of work, honestly. So we have a couple minutes, so we're going to look at this. We're going to learn how astrophysics is steeped in systemic racism and white supremacy, and we're also going to read about the trans sports player who says that they've never felt any kind of advantage, so obviously it's not there. Astrophysics, steeped in systemic racism and white supremacy, says Colorado College science professor. When I first read this headline and saw she was from Colorado, I assumed that she was in Boulder, but Colorado College is actually in Colorado Springs. And I remember trying to drive through their campus. You know how they always have like those crosswalks that mean that they can get across streets from one part of campus to the next. And they are the most entitled people I have ever had the misfortune of waiting for at a crosswalk. But I digress. The professor complains how science is discussed with a very violent and hyper-masculine way. Oh my gosh. Okay. A Colorado professor believes astrophysics is steeped in systemic racism and white supremacy. Natalie Gosnell, a professor of physics at Colorado College, wants to take an unorthodox approach to teach physics by interpreting it through a lens of race. Oh, goody. Both artists and scientists are just observing things about the world, making interpretations about those observations, and then sharing their interpretation, Gosnell told Colorado College News. So she makes an interesting point here, and I want you guys to remember this. Artists and scientists are merely observing things, interpreting those observations, and sharing their interpretation. So she's going to use that to say that art is much like science because artists do the same things that scientists do. But I think what she's not understanding is that everyone is entitled to making their own observation. And when she complains about the way that people write about the stars and astrophysics, she is not listening to her own words. She is not recognizing that people are entitled to drawing their own conclusions. The astrophysicist claims she struggled to deal with a white male-dominated industry who don't share the same sensibilities as she does. So people are different than she is, and she does not like this. Therefore, Gosnell maintains the view that the potential to combine art and science is inhibited by systemic racism and white supremacy. That does not make sense. As an astrophysicist, I'm a product of institutions that are steeped in systemic racism and white supremacy, she said. The tenets of white supremacy that show up in physics of individualism and exceptionalism and perfectionism, it's either or thinking, and there's no subtlety, there's no gray area. All of this manifests in the way that we think about our research and what counts as good research, what counts as important research. So, first of all, she used the wrong expression. It should be tenet, T-E-N-E-T, tenets of white supremacy, not tenants. Tenants are people who pay rent to a landlord to rent an apartment or a home. She's also saying that science is too black and white, which shows me that she shouldn't be working in science at all, because science necessarily is objective. Her interpretation of science can be fully subjective, but the facts themselves 100% objective, and they're based on actual measurable truths. And she takes issue with the truth. It sounds to me like she's just a postmodernist looking for an excuse to be postmodern-y. Really don't think that she's taking the right approach here, but you can really clearly see the Marxism and the postmodernism as she tries to explain herself. Her argument is just full of holes, and maybe she's just not expressing herself well, but it's pretty clear to me that she's just a postmodernist and she's trying to be special in her study in what I'm sure actually is a white male-dominated field. Gosnell's perspective is manifested through her artwork. According to a newspaper affiliated with Colorado College, she created an art piece depicting how dying stars transfer mass to other orbiting stars. Her latest art piece, The Gift, tells the story of a dying star transferring its mass to its orbiting star. Dying star phenomenon has typically been viewed through a hypermasculine lens, or a branding of the mass receiving star as the bad boys of the universe, Gosnell told the outlet. I think because science and art have been so separated, there's systemic issues within science. The metaphors that are often chosen to discuss science are very violent and hypermasculine. Gosnell's research focuses on the evolutionary histories and future evolution of canonically strange binary stars. That sounds very important. Furthermore, Gosnell built a strong reputation in academia as an astrophysicist, receiving the prestigious Cottrell Scholar Award. Okay, she could have stopped there. Her work on the exclusive environment of physics has been published at the American Institute of Physics and the American Physical Society. So this is really something that's making her feel more special. So I think that's why she's going with it. She likes the fact that she's a lady in an otherwise male-dominated field, and she likes the fact that she has something unique to say about it, which I think is just proof of the participation trophy award generation. Really don't like that. That's really not actually useful when it comes to science, and I don't think that people are going to like that moving forward. So I'm going to read this one last article, and then I will look at all your comments. Very excited. I have never felt like the strongest, tallest girl on the team. Okay, she's never felt like this person. Never felt like the strongest, tallest girl. Transgender women's rugby player insists she has no advantage over her competitors and says she is, quote, a shell of the athlete she was before transitioning. So interesting to me that people notice they are not who they used to be once they transition, supposedly, to a different gender, once they start taking those cross-sex hormones, because to me, that just highlights the difference between males and females. A trans rugby player has spoken about what it's like to be a trans woman in sport. Emma Farnan plays for Southern Headliners Rugby Club women's team. She says, quote, being trans doesn't mean inherently that I'm going to be a good player. That's true. Emma says she still works her butt off to be where she is in the sport. Okay. A transgender women's rugby player has spoken out about what it's really like competing as a trans woman in sports, saying she can't even come close to the level of athleticism she used to achieve before she transitioned. Well, of course she would say this. I'm going to refer to her as Emma. Of course Emma would say this because Emma took hormones that intentionally reduced her athletic ability because Emma wanted to present as a female or closer to a female. I still work my butt off to be able to be where I am in sport and to continue performing, the 27-year-old aerospace engineer who's studying Emma's PhD at Indiana's University of Notre Dame said. So often discussion of trans women in sport comes down to assuming that we are able to play at the same level as men, and we just can't. We are women and we compete equally as a woman. That is incorrect. They do not compete equally as a woman. What happened with people like Leah Thomas was that they were subpar male athletes, and then they decided they were transgender and began competing as the opposite sex, and they quickly rose to the ranks and became some of the top performers in that gender. Oh, pink hair. Fascinating. Good choice. Emma, center, holding onto the ball, plays for the Southern Headliners Rugby Club women's team in the Premier Rugby Sevens leagues. No one knows anything about rugby, so that doesn't make anything to anybody. There's not a single time with PR7s that I walked out and felt like I was the strongest or fastest or tallest on the team. I would have to look at the actual measurements of Emma's other team members to see if that is the case. also expressed frustration over not being able to play at a higher level than the PR7s after the World Body for Rugby banned transgender women from playing in international events such as the Olympics in 2020. Good. World Rugby said after months of research it had concluded that safety and fairness cannot presently be assured for women competing against trans women in contact rugby, however allowing national foundations to implement grassroots policies. That's fine to leave it to them too. I just think it's really dangerous because there are so many people like me that have gone through, this person's terrible English, that have went through all the precautions and went through all of the steps to be able to compete fairly, Emma told GMA. Yeah, so this is the trans female contender, clearly physically different from teammates. Transition senior year of college. Yes, here's Emma. Left with partner, female as well, supposedly, who is originally from Bayshore, New York, expressed her frustration over not being able to play at a higher level. Yes, so Emma is definitely taller, much closer to this person's height. And yes, still very clearly showing a lot of the facial features of a male. So let's see if we can find a picture of the Headliners team. What's the full name of the team? Southern Headliners Rugby Club. Let's see. No one knows anything about rugby, so I can't even spell. Let's see if we can find a picture of them. I'm so curious because Emma never felt like Emma was taller than the other teammates. But for some reason, I don't remember her last name. Yeah, okay. To me, this person is clearly very much taller than fellow competitors. And I know that this is, especially in the case of rugby, because rugby is so violent, this is actually really a serious problem. I don't think that's them. Yeah. What? They have mixed genders? Interesting. So they have males and females. Okay. Well, again, I don't know enough about rugby to be able to say. All I know is that people who were born and biologically recognized to be male should certainly never compete against females because that's not fair and it can lead to serious issues for the people who were born female and who were recognized as female at birth. So that's all I have to say about that. That view probably won't surprise you guys, but I adhere to my policy of not using people's preferred pronouns because I like the truth and would want someone to tell me the truth if I were ever deluding myself. All right. I can still beat the average skateboarder in a game of skate. Don't make me show you up at your own game. Oh boy, Andy's getting into it with skateboarders. Goodness gracious. Don't challenge Andy. He will fight you. Just kidding. California is broken. Kalians need to fix it, says Andy. That's a great expression for that. Leo Terrell used to be a Democrat. He got red-pilled by Trump. Haha, that's awesome. Yeah, I feel like Larry Elder also used to be a Democrat, and he red-pilled himself when it came to... I forget what it was, but he was like, I just started paying attention and I stopped being a leftist. Good for them. Easiest fix to the jail problem. If the guilty party apologizes, let them go. There you go. Problem solved. It's corrupt and I 100% do not believe you can have fair elections here, but to be fair, people here are super dumb. I've had friends move here from other states. All have said California people are horrible. I find California people are very nice, but they don't think deeply about issues. In my experience, I have such a small set of anecdotal experience with Californians. I don't think they're like terrible people. I just think they don't give it enough thought. And I think that's probably why they got a bunch of their policies. I think California is beyond saving at this point. Maybe. I hope that's not the case. Anyone got more info on who Crowder was talking about? Nobody knows. He did not say. Does anyone think it's Daily Wire? I personally do not. He did not work with the Daily Wire. If they offered him a contract he didn't want, I don't think that he would have taken them to task like that, especially since he didn't work for them. It sounded to me like it was a company he had worked with in the past who had very strict restrictions on what he couldn't do. He was talking about how he was very tired and had been tired for a long time, and it certainly seemed to me like he had not really been enjoying what he'd been doing for quite a while, which is a difficult place to be in. The Crowder story, what is it? Asks Andy. I will show you the video for sure. Boys aren't looking for role models. They're trying to find their fathers. But their mothers kick them out. The cuffs said it was okay. They're just doing their job. Cops said it was okay. They're just doing their job. I'm not sure what you're referring to. Crowder read a nasty contract from a conservative group. He put up a site. Interesting. Well, I have no idea if it was the Daily Wire. It might have been the Blaze. It might have been the contract that they worked under. I'm not sure. The contracts conservative groups have you sign, which are absurd. Yeah, that's exactly what Crowder was talking about. Oh, interesting. I had no idea. I thought he left the Blaze. He did leave the Blaze. He's a free agent, so he can talk about all this stuff. He did. The video dropped today. That's right. Okay, I'm throwing out an idea, says Bree. I don't think this, and I don't want to be proven wrong, but could he be talking about TPUSA? I am not sure. I do know that TPUSA has a set of rules. They're trying to cover their butts, which is what everybody is trying to do all the time, and I understand. To me, it seemed like they were more in thrall to big tech, which was his main argument, was that this is actually a really big problem. And in that regard, I completely agree with him. I don't like the idea of feeding the alligator, and I don't like the idea of people who are willing to do that. That's not a mark of strength to just be like, oh, okay, I'm going along with whatever you want. The Bible does say to turn the other cheek. Why? Because somebody slapped you. Not sure there. Not sure what that full context would be. Alex Clark is always half-jokingly saying she's going to lose her job on our podcast, but now I'm like, wait, is that a joke? But who knows? It could be anybody. Yeah, I think that we should make it easier, and this is something Crowder talked about. He was like, we should make it easier for people to be independent content creators. And I will tell you guys right now that I don't make any money on YouTube, which is fine. I've always said that my whole point in having a voice at all is to kind of try to give people a little bit of optimism and a place to be heard. Because today on my Twitter, I asked what your one fail-safe way to make friends has been in the past. And a lot of people gave me a lot of really cool ideas. And I was thinking that I feel like we should make this particular chat on YouTube, a place for people to meet, bump into, and maybe develop relationships and friendships. Which I really like the idea of. I know how hard it is to find friends. I feel like social media has had such a detrimental impact on people that they go out and they feel like they have no idea where to begin, which is really hard. And I wouldn't wish that on anybody. But if you are in search of friends, you should certainly look in this chat. You are more than welcome to go over to my Twitter and go talk to the people who commented on that thread. I'm probably going to pin that tweet to the top of my Twitter timeline because I think it's so important. And then we're going to continue looking at this idea as we go forward, because friendship is incredibly important. That's a huge part of building community, and actually talking to people you don't fully agree with, finding things that you have in common with people, even with whom you don't agree. And I think that's really necessary and really missing in our modern world. So hopefully we'll be able to do that. That's something that Andy and I know for sure are going to be working on going forward. And hopefully we can make a difference in the world in that way. I know we won't be able to make a difference to everybody, but if you can make a difference to even a small handful of people, that is a huge win. So thank you guys all very much for joining me. I'm now 3 minutes over, so I'm going to call it good and go make dinner for Andy. I will see you all tomorrow at the same time, same place. Check out my Substack, lydialeiderman.substack.com, and sourpatchlids.me. And then I'm trying to think if there's anything else I need to say. Go out and try to make some friends, for sure, because that's what we all really need. We need someone to hold us accountable and someone to bounce our ideas off of. And we all need friends. So let's work on that, for sure. February is at least a short month, thank goodness, but I've always considered it one of the darker months of the year, and I think that if we focus on what's good and bright about the world, it will make it a lot more bearable. Oh, you guys should also check out the most recent episode of Making the Argument, which we just dropped at 5 p.m. today. You guys could certainly listen to that between now and Timcast IRL, because it's about that length. Thank you all for joining me. Until next time,